Hello guys, in this tutorial I'll be talking about input types in HTML. We have a couple of them like input type of a button, of a checkbox, of a color. A color will help you to select color codes from a pop-up. We have the date, email, we have the file, date time local, have hidden, image, month, number, password. This one will help you to fetch a password from the user. We have the radio, we have the range. That one will help you to select a range of numbers. We have a search. The input type of a search will help you to search maybe from a list. When you are using JavaScript, you can add functionality using JavaScript. We have the text, which can be used to get a text from the user, maybe a name, a username, a country. We have time basically will help you to get the current time from your phone. URL will help you to get a link that you can process it in a form. And we have a week. Input type of a week will help you to select a week from a dialog. So I'm going to now show you how to use these types of input types. We are going to start with input type of a text. So first of all, I'm assuming that you have already connected your folder in vscode, and you are at this point. You can see I have some other files here. I was trying to code some other things. So we are going to create a new file, HTML. So you come here at new file, you click there, then you call this file input underscore types dot html, right? So now we have an HTML file that we are going to use to demonstrate the input types. So first of all, I'm going to type HTML, and I'm going to be presented with these four the HTML5 boilerplate. This one you can get from the marketplace extensions, and it will give you a starter code for HTML that you are going to use to write your code. I'm going to remove the script. We are not going to use JavaScript in this tutorial. I'm only going to focus on HTML only. So first of all, to be able to use these input types, I'm going to create a form. So to create a form in HTML, you just type form and you close it. Now we can get a label. I'm going to insert a label, type a label and give it 4. 4 is basically what you are going to target. So I'm going to give it f name, which means I'm going to target the first name input. I'm going to use a break line so that my file can be well arranged. I'm also going to get a input. I'm going to get type is equals to text, right? Now put it inside here. Input type of text, I'm going to give it ID of f name, as we have used the label 4. The label 4, what follows is actually the ID value of the input type, so it will be f name. And I'm also going to give it a name of the same thing, same as f name, right? I'm going to close it. I'm going to basically close it, right? So this is the input type of our text, which means now we are telling the browser that we only need to get an input of type text. So I'm going to save my code and I'm going to open with live server. Live server is also a marketplace extension. You can get it from the extension section in VS Code, and it will help you to reload your file automatically without saving and going to the browser to reload. I'm going to open with live server, and as you can see, we have our label, which is the first name, and we have the input type. So here, as you can see, if I try to, so this one tells the browser that we need a text. So I'm going to type maybe Micah. As you can see, This is a type of a text, so this is the input type of a text, right? Now I'm going to target input type of a password. Now let's say in our form, after the first name, I want to capture the password of the user. So I'm going to copy this one, and I'm going to paste down here. I'm going to change this here as fpass, meaning it's password. I'm going to say this one is a password. I'm also going to use a break line here. I'm also going to use an input type of password, and I'm also going to change this one from fname to fpass because you are targeting the password. Now if I save and reload and go to my browser, you can see now we have a label of password. Now I'm going to type my password. Right, you can see the input type of a password will generate these small black dots which are going to hide the value of your password, so that whenever you are trying to log in a site, nobody can see your password, right? After the input type of a password, I'm going to target input type of submit. So input type of submit, this one will submit your form. Now we have first name from the user, we also have the password. Now we want to submit the form, so here I'm going to first put a break line. I'm also going to use an input type. I'm going to specify type is equals to submit. I'm going to give it a value. This is what is going to appear in the browser. I'm going to call it submit, right? I'm going to close this one. If now I save and go back to my browser, you can see there is a button called submit. So if I type the name Micah and I put a password and submit, you can see now on the top we have the f name is equals to Micah and f pass is equals to that one, because basically the submit will submit the form and it clears the input. As you can see, they are now blank, right? Now moving from the input type of submit, I'm going to demonstrate the input type of reset. Input type of reset, this one will basically reset your form. Like if you had entered some values in your form, this one is going to clear them, and it clears them all at once. So I'm going to come here below the input type of the password, and I'm going to use an input type of reset, right? I'm going to use an input type of reset, and it takes nothing. You're just going to close it. I'm also going to use a break line and another break line so that you can have a space. If I now save my form and go back to the browser, you can see we have this reset. So if I type now Micah and I type the password and reset, you can see it clears the form at once. So you don't have to go like you type Micah and you start now deleting one and another. So that one was a input type of reset. Now after reset, I'm going to the input type of a radio, and the input type of a radio, it defines a radio button which allows the user to select only one of the limited number of choices. So before reset, I'm going to basically go down here, and I'm going to type the input first of all I can comment here. This one I can say input type of radio, right? So I'm going to use an input, and then the type will be radio. Going to have ID, maybe let me use ID of HTML, and the name I'm going to basically call it HTML, and its value, have to specify the value that will be shown on the radio. So the value will be HTML language, and let me call it language, right? I'm also going to include a label for label will be for ID, which is our HTML. It's going to have a value of HTML. So this label is the one that will be corresponding to the input type of radio, which you have given the value of HTML language and the name of HTML. I'm also going to take another, I'm going to first of all going to take a break line so that I can separate them. I'm also going to copy these, then I'm going to paste down here 2 times. The ID of this one will be CSS, the name will be CSS, this one will be CSS language. The label for CSS, I'm going to give it the text of CSS, right? For the third one, I'm actually going to specify that it is a JS, which is for JavaScript. The name will be JS, and this one, the value will be JS language. Label 4, I'm going to give it the ID, which is JS, and also JavaScript, right? And also comment here, this is the end of radius, right? So now if I save and go back to the browser, you will see we have the radio buttons. We can see HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So I can select this one, can also select CSS or JavaScript, right? Also going back, now that was the input type of the radius. The next one will be the input type of a button. So I'm going to clear these ones, or let me comment here and use input type of button, right? So an input type of a button, we can be able to maybe give it a function or maybe an event. So I'm going to type input, I'm going to say the type is basically button because we are targeting the button. I'm going to give it a value will be of click me. The on click event, I'm going to say alert is a JavaScript inbuilt function. I'm going to say hello, you clicked me, right? So I'm going to close it, right? Now if I save, let me use a break line here so that you can see it well. I'm also going to give it a break line. If I save now and come back to my browser, you can see we have the click me. If you click it, you can see the JavaScript alert which says hello, you clicked me, right? So that one was the input type of a button. After the button, now we are going to the input type of the colors. So this one will help you to select a color from a pop-up. So before the reset, I'm going to comment here, then I can say input type is equals to color, right? So I'm going to type a label. I'm going to use a label first. I'm going to type a label. It's going to have a form. It will be color. I'm going to say select your favorite, right, color, right? That is a label. I'm going to give it a break line so that we can have an empty line between the elements. Now going to use the input type. As you all know, it will be of color. I'm going to give it an ID. ID will be the color which you have specified in the label. I'm going to give it a name which will be fav color, which is a favorite color. I'm going to close it and use a break line so that you can see it well. Now, I save and I go back to my browser. You can see this one. Select your favorite color below the click me button. You can now click there and you can see there is this pop-up that will be generated that will help you to select your color. So if I move this one, you can see down here the red is at the 255, green 0, blue 0. If I move, I can also move this one. You can see the values are changing, so you can be able to get the color code from the pop-up. Now I'm going back to my VS Code. After input type of color, I'm going to talk about the input type of date, and it is basically used to generate a date picker whereby you can select the date. So after the color, I'm going to come down below here, comment. Now I'm going to say input, then the type will be of date, right? So we have said this one will give you a date, will give a dialog that you are going to select the date. So I'm going to use a input. I'm going to say the type. The type will be of date. Now going to give it an ID of date, the name of car date, which means is a current date, right? I'm going to use another break line here so that you can be able to see the input type well, and also another one here. So if now I save and go back to my browser, you can see we have the input type of a date, and you can see it has a format of dd stroke 4wise. This one will be the month, the day, and the year. So if you click on this icon, the calendar icon, you can be able to select the date. Like today is 4th March of 2022. So if I select this one, you can see this is a 4th of March 2022. I can be able to select again and maybe clear. So when you select clear, you are basically clearing the input field. So now I select again the icon and maybe specify another date. You can see now this is that 1st of March 2022, right? Now I go back to my VS Code. After the input type of the date, I'm going to talk about the input type of date time local. So this time local is basically like the input type of the date, but this one will generate you a date and the current time from your phone or from your laptop. So I'm going to demonstrate this one below. I'm going to put a break line there. I'm going to comment. I'm going to say input, then the type will be date time local, right? So I'm going to come here. This will be an input, and I'm going to say the type will be date time dash local, right? And I'm going to give it an ID of date time. You can give it your own ID. I'm going to give it a name of car date time, right? I'm now going to close it. I'm going to give it a break line and another break line so that you can be able to see the inputs well. So now I'm going to save my file and I'm going to my browser, and you can see we have this longer one, date time. This one is a date time local. This one was the date only. So now you can see I can select from the icon, calendar icon, and I can be able to select this one, and you can see now the time is 1:38 p.m. so it automatically generates a date and the current time. You can also be able to select from the dialog. You can maybe say 3:40. You can see it changes. You can select 7:44. You can select maybe am. So this one was the input type of date time local. Now I'm going back to my browse to my vscode, and I'm going to tackle the input type of email. As you can hear, the input type of an email will actually ask you for a valid email, right? So I'm going to comment this one, date time local. I'm going to comment this one. I'm going to say now input. I'm going to take the type of email, right? I'm going to say input. No, to open the input type, basically going to be the email. ID, I'm going to give it email, and basically a name of my email, right? So this one will ask the user for the email. I'm going to put 2 break lines so that you can be able to see it well. Control S to save. I'm now going to my browser, and you can see these inputs. This one is for the email, so this one will only accept an email. This one will be like example at gmail.com, right? So you basically put an email here. Can put that one. You can see if now I type the email wrongly, it says please, let me show you, please enter a part followed by at gmail.com is incomplete. So you cannot be able to submit the form if you have not given a valid Gmail or an email, right? So that one was for the email. I'm going to tackle the input type of the file. So I'm coming here, I'm going to comment, I'm going to say input type equals to the type of file, right? I'm going to say input type will be of file. I'm going to give it the ID. The ID will be file, and I'm going to give it a name of my file, right? I'm going to use 2 break lines so that you can be able to see the input well. I'm going to save my file. I'm going back to my browser. You can see it generates this input which says choose file. This is a button, and it says no file chosen because we have not chosen any file from our computer. So now I'm going to click here, choose file, and I'm going to maybe go to the downloads, and I'm going to select that one, and then can open. So you can see now I've been able to choose a file, is this one here, .zip. So this one will help you to select any type of file from the phone or from your computer. The other type of input will be the input type of a month. Input type of a month will basically help the user to select a month and a year. So I'm going to come below here, I'm going to comment, I'm going to say input type is equals to month, right? I'm going to come out here, I'm going to type input type is equals to month, and I'm going to give it an ID of maybe month, and I'm going to give it a name of my birthday, right? My birthday month, right? I'm going to close this one, put two break lines, can be able to see it well. I'm going to save my file, I'm going to reload it in my browser. You can see input type of the month. When I click on it, it asks me March 2022. I'm going to select maybe June. You can see it gives you the month and the year. So input type of a month, as I said earlier, it will give you the month and the year that you have selected, right? Going to now the next input type will be the input type of a number. So I'm going to comment, I'm going to say input type is equals to number, right? I'm going to say input type is equals to number, right? And I'm also going to give it an ID. You can say ID is equals to quantity, and I'm going to give it a name of also my quantity, right? So put two break lines. This one will help the user to select the number is the type. I'm going to save it. I'm going to come back to my browser. As you can see, we have this input type. As you can see, if I try to type maybe my car, it will not be able to type. But if I type 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 0, it will be displayed here because they are type of number, right? Another thing you can add on the input type of the number after the name, can be able to add minimum. So minimum, I'm going to say minimum is 1 and maximum will be 5. So which means that you cannot go below 1 and you cannot go above 5. So if I save now and I'm going to reload, you can see now it has these two icons. After 5, you can see I cannot pass 5, I cannot add another number. And if I go below, you can see I cannot go below 1, right? So that one was the input type of a number. The next type of the input will be the input type of range. So input type of range, basically what it does is that it generates input range that you can be able, a slider that you can be able to slide so that you can maybe select the number. So now I'm going to comment and I'm going to say input, the type will be of range, right? I'm now going to say input going to say the type will be range, because you are going to use the range. I'm going to give it an ID of volume, right? I'm going to give it a name of my volume. I'm going to say a minimum. You have to give it a minimum by default. A minimum, I'm going to say is 0 in my case, and also my maximum will be maybe 50 or 70. Let me use 70. You can use 100 depending on whatever you are coding. I'm also going to use 2 break lines so that you can be able to see the slider. Now I'm going to save my file, and I'm going to reload. You can see now we have the slider, right? You can be able to slide it between 0 and 50 so that you can be able to select maybe whatever you want, and you can also add some more functionality using JavaScript. Like you can take the slider at the position, then you can be able to compute something using JavaScript. That one we can do in another tutorial. Now the next input will be the input type of search. As I said earlier, the input type of a search, this one will help you to search from a list, right? Let's say you are building a website and you want your users to be able to search maybe what the website offers. You can be able to do that. I'm going to comment, I'm going to say input type will be search, right? So I'm going to say input, and the type will be search. I'm going to give it an ID of, let's say, G search, for standing for Google search. I'm going to give it a name of also a Google search, right? I'm going to close it. I'm going to use 2 break lines so that you can be able to see the input well. Control S to save. I'm now going to reload. As you can see below the range, we have the input type of search. If I type something, you can see we have this X icon. This X icon is only available in the input type of search to help you to clear the input. So if I click on it, you can see it clears the whatever I had typed. If I type now Micah, you can see now I can be able to clear it and maybe perform another search, right? The next in our input will be the input type of time. You can be able to ask your users to tell you the time that maybe they were logging into your website or they were creating the account in your website. So I'm going to comment and say input, the type will be time, right? So I'm going down here, going to type input type will be time, ID will be time, the name maybe can say car time, right? I'm going to use a break line, and the break line I'm going to save it. So time is just going to give us the current time. Control save. You can see this one, it has the icon of a clock. So now we can be able to select time. If I select now, you can see it's 1:51 p.m. You can be able to select another time, right? You can see here it changes, now is 2:52 p.m. right? So that was the input type of time. The other one is the input type of URL. So I'm going to comment down here. I'm going to say this one is our input, then the type will be URL. So a URL is the one that starts with the HTTP or HTTPS. So we are going to be able to select input type. I'm going to say input type will be URL. I'm going to say ID. Maybe we can say is a home page. I'm going to say the name will be my URL, right? I'm going to close it. I'm going to use two break lines that you can be able to see our inputs well. Control save. I'm now going to, you can see this one is a input type of URL. If I type another thing and I try to submit, you can see it says please enter a URL, right? So if I now type https:// then example.com, can be able to submit my form, right? So the last one on the list will be the input type of a week. This one will, you can hear it will help you to select input type of a week. You can be able to select a week from a year, right? I'm going to comment here. I'm going to say input type is equals to week, right? I'm going to say input type is equals to week. Then I'm going to give it a ID of week, right? And a name of, no, not an, I'm going to type a name, sorry for that, name of week, right? I'm going to close it. I'm going to maybe give it a label on top. You can see a label, can give it a label. Then for week, because week is our ID, week, and I'm going to say select a week, right? Then this one will be a break line. I'm also going to give two break lines here, right? Now if I say reload, you'll see this one select a week. So if I click on this icon, I can be able to select maybe the 9th week, the 10th, the 12th week. So this will be week 12 of 2022. If I select again, I can be able to choose week 14 of 2022, right? And this one marks the end of our tutorial here at Code Essentials KE. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe to our channel, and if you have any queries, you can comment on the comments sections below. Thank you.